Now let's have a look at another poem, that is Grandma Climbs a Tree. Let's have a look at the new words or glossary words of this poem. Grandma climbs a tree, glossary, new words. In a trice, very quickly, kshanamatraದಲ್ಲಿ. The students finished the work in a trice. Outcome, what actually happened? Parinama. When the students finished their painting, the outcome was very beautiful. Hold one's peace, keep quiet, shantavagiru. The child held her peace until her father went out. Undaunted, without hesitation, edegundade. While climbing tree, Vinaya fell down, but undauntedly she tried again. Chore, task, kelasa. Ramesh finished his daily chores before coming to school. Sherry, yellow or brown colored wine, madhyada ondu gutuku. People usually drink sherry during winter season. Upholding, making clear to the world, etti hidiyudu. We should uphold the Constitution of India. Extra words, genius, a natural talent, medhavi. Krishna scored 100 out of 100 marks in maths. He is genius in maths. Graceful, elegant, refined, vinayashila. The girl won hearts of many people with her graceful character. Feared, fright, bhayapadu. It was feared that this year there will be no classes at all. Terrible, awful, bhayanaka. When the students saw tiger in the zoo, they all felt terrified. Rescue, save from a dangerous situation. Apayadinda paru madu. When the baby was drowning in the water, she was rescued by a passerby. Sigh, breathe deeply and heavily. Nittusirubidu. After the exams, all the students sighed. Tuck up, comfortable arrangements in bed. Surakshitavagi malagisu. Mom tucked the baby up in the cradle. Hell, the world of the dead, Naraka. People usually curse the bad people as go to hell. Reside, to live in a particular place, Vasisu. Many people are residing in the outskirts of the city. So far, we studied the new words of the poem. Now, let me read the poem. Now, I will read the poem. Listen to it once, closing the book, and again listen to it, opening the book and looking at the words that I read, so that you can better understand the pronunciation. Then you read this poem once or twice, or any number of times you want. My grandmother was a genius. You would like to know why? Because she could climb trees, spreading or high. She would be up their branches in a trice. And mind you, when last she climbed a tree, she was 62. Ever since childhood, she had this gift for being happier in a tree than in a lift. And though as years went by, she would be told that Climbing trees should stop when one grew old, and that growing old should be gone about gracefully. Should laugh and say, "Well, I'll grow disgracefully, I can do it better." And we had to agree, for in all the garden there wasn't a tree she hadn't been up at one time or another, having learned to climb from a loving brother when she was 6. But it was feared by all that one day she would have a terrible fall. The outcome was different. While we were in town, she climbed a tree and couldn't come down. After the rescue, the doctor took Granny's temperature and said, "I strongly recommend a quiet week in bed." We sighed with relief and tucked her up well. Poor Granny. For her, it was like a brief season in hell. Confined to her bedroom, while every breeze whispered of summer and dancing leaves. But she had held her peace till she felt stronger. Then she sat up and said, "I will lie here no longer." And she called for my father and told him undaunted that a house in a tree top was what she now wanted. My dad knew his duties. He said, "That's all right. You will have what you want, dear. I'll start work tonight." With my expert assistance, he soon finished the chore, made her a tree house with windows and a door. So Granny moved up, and now every day I climb to her room with glasses and tray. She sits there in state and drinks sherry with me, upholding her right to reside in a tree. So far we studied the model reading of this poem. Now let's have a look at the explanation of this poem. My dear students, the poem "Grandma Climbs a Tree" is written by one of the most famous writers of Indian English literature. He has written more than 30 books for children. And in the poem "The Grandma Climbs a Tree," the poet explains an unusual habit of his grandma. That habit is to climb trees. She used to climb trees, and it's a comedy type of poem, and let's study this poem and enjoy. My dear students, so far we have studied the new words or the glossary words of the poem "Grandma Climbs a Tree." Now let's see what's there in this poem. My grandmother was a genius. You would like to know why? The beginning of this poem itself is about grandma's genius. The poet says she is a genius person, and he also asks whether we would like to know why she is genius. Because she could climb trees, spreading or high. What's that genius, you know? She is able to climb trees, spreading or high, however big might be the tree or however tall might be the tree. She would be up their branches in a trice. Within moments, she would climb up trees and she would sit in one of the branches. And mind you, when she last climbed a tree, she was 62. The poet emphasizes one thing here. Climbing trees might be a common thing, but the age when our grandma had climbed a tree for the last time, at that time she was 62 years old. Ever since childhood, she would had this gift for being happier in a tree than in a lift. She has this habit of climbing trees from so many years. Since childhood itself, she has this habit, and she will be very happy in a tree than in a lift. If we press a button, lift takes us up, and if we press another button, the lift takes us down. Usually children enjoy being in a lift, but grandma loves to be living in a tree. What does poet call his grandma? What is the childish habit that the grandma has kept? What was her age when she had last climbed the trees? Where is she happier, in a lift or in a tree? And though as years went by, she would be told, as the years pass, the people used to tell about something her. What they told, that climbing trees should stop when one grew old. These kind of childish habits will be gone when a person grows old. That way the people used to talk among themselves. And that growing old should be gone about gracefully. The people further told the grandma how a person should grow old. He should be so cultured, humble manner a person should grow up. She would laugh and say, well, I'll grow disgracefully. The grandma's reply to those people was really strange and unusual. She said, I will grow disgracefully. I don't want to be polished. I don't want to be cultured. I can do it better, she says. I can do it better means I can climb trees better and better. I can climb more and more trees. I can do it better, she says. And we had to agree, for in all the garden there wasn't a tree. And for her, this statement, I can do it better, we should all agree for that. Why, she was able to climb all kind of trees, and there was not even a single tree left in that garden that our grandma hadn't climbed. Let me ask a few questions on this stanza. What would people say about the habit of grandmas climbing trees? What was the reply of grandma when the people said that the growing old should be graceful? Has she climbed all the trees that are available in the garden? Say yes or no. She hadn't been up at one time or another. This means grandma was up in almost all the trees that are available in the garden. Having learned to climb from a loving brother when she was 6, grandma has learned this habit of climbing trees when she was only at 6 years old. Her loving brother has taught her the skill of climbing trees. But it was feared by all that one day she would have a terrible fall. For the people around the grandma, this thing was totally an unusual phenomenon that the grandma climbs a tree. And they all had a fear. What's that fear, One or another day, grandma would definitely fall from tree. The outcome was different. While we were in town, she climbed a tree and couldn't come down. Something or the other happened anyway in the life of grandma. People's fear was that she would fall, but something else happened that brought trouble to our grandma. What happened, once she was up in the tree, but she couldn't come down. At the same time, all the family members were in town and there was nobody to help her out from that situation. Now tell me, who has taught grandma climbing trees? What was the age of grandma when she had learned the skill of climbing trees? What would the other people fear about grandma? What actually happened that brought grandma in danger? After the rescue, the doctor took Granny's temperature and said, anyway, grandma was rescued from that tree, and the doctor came and he checked up the health of grandma. He took her temperature and the doctor recommended her. I strongly recommend a quiet week in bed. The doctor recommended her bed rest for a week. We sighed with relief and tucked her up well. All the family members, including the children, felt very happy and they felt relieved. Anyway, grandma is out of danger. And they took care of her very well in the bed. And they provided all the facilities the grandma wanted on the bed itself. Poor granny, for her it was like a brief season in hell. But what is the situation of the grandma? She is a lady, she cannot stay indoors. And she has broken all the barriers of the culture that had imposed on her. She was an outgoing person. And it was like a hell for grandma. Confined to her bedroom while every breeze whispered of summer and dancing leaves. She had been confined in the bed. It was like a prison for her. But outside, the cool breeze is blowing and the leaves are rustling, and there is God's plenty outside. Whole lot of things are happening. How can grandma hold her peace in such a summer beautiful situation? Now tell me, what did doctor recommend for grandma? What was the response of the family members? And how did the family members take care of grandma? How did grandma feel when she was confined to the bed? But she had held her peace till she felt stronger. Anyway, grandma is weak now. That is why, as recommended by the doctor, she is on the bed. But she was very peaceful until she felt stronger from inside. Then she sat up and said, I lie here no longer. Immediately, when once she felt she is so strong, she sat up on the bed and very clearly told to everyone that I am not going to stay on this bed forever. And she called for my father and told him undaunted. Without any hesitation, she told son, she called him and told him very clearly that a house in a tree top was what she now wanted. She was a kind of person who loves to be on top of trees. And she says to her son very clearly that all that I want is a house on tree top. My dad knew his duties. The poet's father was a very considerate person, and he was very affectionate towards his mother, and he was ready to build a house for her on a tree. He said, "That's all right. You will have what you want, dear. I will work. I will start work tonight." And very obediently, the poet's father assured the grandma that whatever you want, that will be ready. This night itself, I will start work for your new house on tree. Now tell me, how long did the grandma hold her peace? Whom did she call and said that I want a house on tree top? What was the reply of the poet's father for that? When is the poet's father is going to start work? Now we are in the last stanza of this poem. With my expert assistance, he soon finished the chore. The poet is explaining here. He helped his father to build on tree top for her grandma. He says, with my expert assistance. How much considerate was his father? The same amount of consideration the poet also has for his grandma. Made her a tree house with windows and a door. They soon prepared a house. They built a house on the tree top with windows, with door, with all kind of amenities inside. So Granny moved up, and now every day I climb to her room with glasses and tray. As soon as the building of the house on tree top was completed, the grandma moved up and started living in that tree house. Now what's the poet's duty, He takes a tray and glasses to the grandma. She sits there in state and drinks sherry with me. The grandma sits comfortably and sits with dignity in that tree house, and she drinks sherry with me. With poet, she drinks sherry, upholding her right to reside in a tree. She had made it very clear that she will live in the trees, that's all, and she upheld her right to be residing in a tree. In the poem, The Grandma Climbs a Tree, we see that the poet calls his grandma as genius because she could climb trees spreading or high. And she used to climb trees very quickly. Even though she is 62 years old, she has kept the habit of climbing trees. She will be very happy in the trees than in a lift. The people used to tell to grandma that one should grow gracefully, so that climbing of trees of this, the habit of climbing of trees of this grandma would stop one day. But the grandma laughed and said to those people, I would rather grow disgracefully, but I don't stop climbing trees. I can do it better and better as I grow older and older. She was doing this fantastic, and she did it well also. There was not even a single tree left out by the grandma that she hasn't climbed. That means she climbed almost all the trees that are available in the garden. The people felt afraid about grandma. Why? They felt that one day or other day grandma would have a terrible fall from the tree. But something else happened. Once grandma was on trees, she couldn't come down, and she was rescued the doctor advised her quite bed rest for a week, and all the family members, including children of that house, felt very happy. They took care of Granny very well. But what was the feeling of the grandma? It was like a brief season of hell for grandma, because she is a person who always used to be outside and enjoy climbing trees. And outside the leaves were rustling and cool breeze was blowing, and those all turned grandma crazy. And as soon as she recovered from her injuries, she sat up on the bed and she called her son and she ordered him, I want house on tree top. Both the poet and poet's father, means grandma's son, built a very beautiful house for grandma on tree top. It was a well furnished house with windows and doors. The poet takes tray and glasses in that tray. Both grandma and grandson sit in that tree house and they drink sherry and they enjoy cool wine. That's how grandma fulfilled her wish of staying in trees forever, and she upheld her right to stay in the trees. This is what a brief introduction of the poem Grandma Climbs a Tree. Now let's study the 2 marks questions of this poem. My dear students, so far we studied the explanation of the poem Grandma Climbs a Tree. Now let's have a look at 2 marks questions of this poem. Short answer type of questions and answers. 1. What does the poet call his grandma? Why does he consider her to be so? In the first stanza itself, the poet calls his grandma something. Why does he call his grandma like that? Why he considers her to be so? The poet calls his grandma a genius because she could climb all kinds of trees, such as taller ones and bigger ones, even at the age of 62. The poet calls grandma very talented or a very naturally talented person. Why you know? Because she was able to climb the trees spreading or high. What was the age of grandma when she last climbed trees? Her age was 62 years. Others feared that grandma would have a terrible fall one day. Did it happen, or what else happened? Grandma is in the habit of climbing trees. What would be the fear of others usually? That we need to answer here. And what they feared happened, or something else happened, is the question, is the meaning of the question. That grandma climbs a tree is really a fearful thing for others. They all feared that grandma would have a terrible fall one or another day. Whether grandma fell from tree or what else happened is the meaning of this question. No, she didn't have a terrible fall, but once she had climbed a tree and could not come down. Something dangerous happened with grandma. Though she hadn't fallen down from the tree, but once everyone was in the town, she had climbed a tree, but she could not come down. That thing happened. 3. What had the doctor recommended? What was the reaction of the kids to this advice? After the rescue, the doctor checked temperature and they recommended something to grandma. What's that? And how the family members, including the kids, reacted to that recommendation? That's the meaning of the question. Answer. The doctor recommended grandma to take rest for a week. The family members, including kids, felt relieved. The doctor took the temperature of grandma and he strongly recommended that grandma should take 1 week of bed rest. The response of the children, including the family members, was that they felt relieved, they sighed. Fourth one, my dad knew his duties. What did he think was his duty? uh, the poet's dad was considerate to his mother. He felt that whatever is necessary for his mother, all those things should be arranged for her. He felt he was very dutiful. The poet says that my dad knew his duties. What was that duty is the meaning of this question. The poet says that his dad knew his duties. To build a house on treetop for grandma was the duty of his father, according to the poet. Grandma's son, the poet's father, was very dutiful person, and the duty was nothing else but to build a comfortable house on tree with all the doors and windows for his mother, or for poet's grandma, as the duty of the father, according to the poet. So these are some of the important 2 marks questions on this poem. Now let's study the 3 marks questions or RC type of questions on this poem. My dear students, so far we studied the 2 marks questions about the poem Grandma Climbs a Tree. Now let's have a look at 3 marks questions or RC type of questions. 1. Ever since childhood, she had this gift. From when she was child, she had this great gift. Who is she here? In this sentence, she. Who is referred as she? Answer, the grandma. What is the gift referred here? Here, whatever gift mentioned, what is that gift? The grandma used to climb trees, and that is the gift. The skill of climbing trees is the gift. Who is the poet of this poem? Who is the poet of the poem? The grandma climbs a tree. He is Ruskin Bond. 2. We sighed with relief and tucked her up well. The family members sighed with relief and they took care of grandma on the bed very well. Who is referred as her? In this sentence, whatever her word is there, who does that word refer to? The grandma, the main character of that poem. Who sighed with relief? Some people become very happy and relieved. Who are they? The poet and his family members. The poet and the family members of the grandma felt very relieved. Why did they sigh with relief? What made them feel relaxed and relieved? Because the doctor had recommended grandma to take bed rest for a week. After the rescue, when grandma was not able to climb down from the tree, doctor came and he took the temperature and advised grandma to take 1 week of bed rest, and that made all of them to feel relieved. Sighed. You will have what you want, dear. I'll start work tonight. Whatever you are wishing, that will be yours, and this night itself I will start that work. Who is referred as I? In this sentence, whatever I is mentioned, whom does that I refer to? Answer, the poet's father. Poet's father or grandma's son. What is the work he is talking about? Here he is telling, I'll start work tonight. What is that work? Answer, a house on treetop for Granny. Granny had wished a house on treetop. About the construction of that house, father is talking here. To whom is this line said? Who is the line addressed to? This line is addressed to the grandma. So far, we studied the 3 marks questions, RC questions of the poem Grandma Climbs a Tree. Now let's study the summary, the most important part of this poem. Let's study summary question. Now the summary of the Grandma Climbs a Tree. This poem is written by one of the famous writers of children literature in India, Ruskin Bond. Ruskin Bond is one of the famous Indian English writers, and he has written more than 30 books for children, and this poem is written by Ruskin Bond, the famous poet. Here in this poem, the poet explains an unusual habit of his grandma. The poet's grandma had kept an unusual habit. Here in this poem, the poet discusses about that strange habit that she enjoyed wholeheartedly. How grandma enjoyed that habit, she enjoyed it wholeheartedly. She had the habit of climbing trees. What's that habit, She used to climb trees, and still she climbed trees even at the age of 62. The poet calls grandma a genius because she could climb trees spreading or high. The poet explains the habit of grandma, that climbing trees, and he calls her genius, very talented, because however spreading the tree might be, or however tall the tree might be, she would be up in the trees within minutes. She enjoyed climbing trees even at the age of 62. She is 62 years old, the grandma is, but still she climbs trees and enjoys that. Her loving brother had taught her the skill of climbing trees when she was at the age of 6. And this skill of climbing trees was taught to her by her loving brother. When she had learned this skill, when she was only at the age of 6. As the granny grew old, her well-wishers felt that she would stop climbing trees. Her well-wishers, or the people around her, used to talk about grandma's habit. She is a small girl, she has this habit of climbing trees, but as she grows old, that habit would stop one day. They talked like that among themselves. Because one's childhood habit is supposed to be given up as one grows old. Whatever childhood habits we keep, one or another day, they will stop. That is what the other people were thinking. And this climbing of trees, this habit would also stop one day, they felt. They felt that one should grow gracefully. One should be so polite. One should grow up well and good, they felt. But grandma laughed and said them she would like to do climbing trees better. The response of the grandma was totally different, and she laughed at their comments, and she told that I would like to learn climbing trees better and better as I grow old. She would rather grow disgracefully and never stop climbing trees. She responded them by saying that I don't want to grow gracefully at all. Even though I grow disgracefully, I don't stop this habit of climbing trees. Everyone had to agree with her because she had climbed all the trees available in the garden. So people had to agree with her because in the garden, whatever trees were available, bigger one, smaller one, almost all the trees she had climbed. Many feared that grandma would have a terrible fall. There was a fear among the people. Grandma is climbing trees, one or another day she is going to fall from the trees. But the other dangerous thing happened. She didn't fall from any tree, but something other dangerous thing happened. What that dangerous thing happened, let's see in page 2. This is page 1. Remaining part of the summary is there. Let's see that also in the next page. Once she had climbed a tree and couldn't come down. Really dangerous thing happened with grandma. What happened, once everyone was out in the town, at that time grandma climbed a tree, but she was not able to come down. She was stuck in the tree itself. After the rescue, the doctor recommended her to take bed rest for a week. Grandma was rescued, and a doctor was immediately called for, and the doctor checked up the health of the grandma, and he strongly recommended her to take bed rest for a week. The family members felt relieved. All the family members felt happy because the grandma is out of danger, and at least for a week she will be kept in the room. She was taken care well. All the family members took care of her well. She felt as if she were living in the hell, having been confined to the bed. Grandma was an outgoing person. She enjoys being in nature. When that kind of person is confined to the bed, would she be happy? No, it was like a hell for grandma in the bed. As soon as she recovered, she ordered her son to build a house for her on treetop. She waited until she recovered fully. As soon as she recovered, she immediately called her son and ordered him, I want a house on treetop, that's all. Her son was very considerate towards her. He soon finished the work. He was a loving son, and he was very considerate towards his mother, and he immediately agreed to her and built a house for her on the treetop. The poet extended his expert helping hand to his father. The poet was also expert in such things, and he gave his expert assistance to his father to finish the work of building a house on a treetop. Then the poet every day climbs up to grandma with tray and glasses. Now grandma is living in tree, and the poet takes a tray and puts glasses in it, and he goes up to grandma. Both the poet and granny enjoyed sherry with dignity. What was there in the glasses, in that tray? It was sherry. Both grandma and the poet enjoy that sherry. It was a wine, a kind of mild wine. Anyway, she upheld her right to live in a tree. The grandma, who had a childish habit, anyway, she decided to completely reside on a tree and with dignity, and she upheld her right to live in a tree. This was all about the summary of Grandma Climbs a Tree. Now let's have the exam questions which were previously asked on this poem. The questions asked in previous board exams on this poem. In June 2021 question has been asked, and September 2020 another question has been asked. All these questions are of summary kind of questions. So summary is most important in this poem, but it is better we should have the knowledge of all kinds of questions and answers on this poem. It is better to be safe than sorry. June 2020, both the narrator and his father were very considerate towards grandma. Justify. Both poet and his father, both were dutiful. Both respected grandma and her wishes. That we need to explain. September 2020, why do you think that Ruskin Bond's grandma was a grown-up woman with childish habits and desires? Substantiate. Grandma had some childish habits, childlike habits and desires. And how do you say that? How do you prove this statement? That's the meaning of this question. For both these questions, just you need to write the statement at the beginning and then write the summary. If you have good grip over English language, then you can modify the answer according to the statement. Both these questions expect 6 to 8 lines of answer. So this is all about Grandma Climbs a Tree. Now let's study another most important poem.